So today we begin reading from the letter of James, and we'll read from it for the next 5 weeks. And it is one of my favorite bits of the New Testament. In fact, I think the entire history of Christianity would have turned out a little differently if we had read James a little bit more and Romans a little bit less. And this little phrase in here is my favorite. Be doers of the word, not just hearers. And some of you have heard me say this before, but this word doers can also be translated as poet. Be poets of the word. That is good stuff. In the gospel this morning in Mark, where we are as Jesus has just fed the 5,000, he has walked on the water, he has healed crowds of people pressed around him. And the religious leaders have seen all of these things, all of these miracles, these healings. They have seen suffering being liberated. They have seen the hungry being fed. They've seen the sick being healed. And they have a chance to come and ask Jesus a question. And they ask, why aren't you washing your hands the right way? It's an interesting question, I guess, if you're really wondering about what is happening here. Why do you and your disciples not fast or wash your hands or observe the Sabbath in the same way as our traditions say to do? Why do you not do the things? Because the things make us feel safe. The things help us know who we are. But the things do not actually keep us safe, and the things do not actually save us. This is, I think, at the heart of the temptation of being religious. The temptation of being religious is a temptation to rely on our actions in the face of our uncertainty. The temptation to find the magic code that will please a God we've made judgmental in our own image. God is continually, firmly, and clearly on the side of compassion. And we are routinely and clearly on the side of looking for the magic key. Jesus says that the source of all of this suffering, the source of defilement, is not in the things that you eat or doing the things. As my friend Nadia says, the call is coming from inside the house. All of these things, the fornication and theft and murder and adultery and avarice, this incredible list of really nasty things that can come from the human heart. These are all evils against other people. They are all sins that come from a lack of compassion. It seems that what breaks God's heart is not rituals done imperfectly, but humans hurting one another. It is so tempting to get the things right, to become pure enough and put only the right things into our bodies, to do the right actions, to make ourselves safe through right actions and doing the things. But us being perfect doesn't seem like God's main agenda. In fact, it doesn't seem to be on God's list at all. What should we do? We ask over and over again. James says that we should care for orphans and widows in their distress, to be more mindful of what we say, to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Our psalmist says we should speak the truth from our hearts. James says we should be poets of the word. Religion, this temptation of religion, is the temptation to locate a problem outside of ourselves, to give ourselves tasks and things to do to ease the ache and anxiety of living in a world that is so full of pain and chaos and suffering. When James talks about visiting orphans and widows in their tribulations, this is going to be an encounter with deep suffering. The world is sticky and it hurts and it feels like there is so little we can do. When we look around at the immensity of the pain and the suffering, when we look at the virus and the climbing numbers and wars and hurricanes and sick children, we feel powerless. We feel powerless because in so many ways we are powerless. And I think this is where this early primal human impulse towards religion comes from. That some ritual done perfectly will keep the chaos at bay, but the chaos keeps bubbling up from our own hearts. And we don't seem to make much headway. The one thing that will not save us, is ourselves getting it right. What will save us is this love of God. And by that, I mean God's love of us, which is already true and perfect and does not need to be earned or performed. God's love of us is undeniable and steadfast. It is our love of God, which is still yearning and hungry. Throughout Jesus's ministry, he touches the untouchables, works on the Sabbath, eats without purity rituals, feasts when he should be fasting. In fact, it seems like Jesus is kind of bad at being religious. Jesus is the ultimate poet of the word. He is the ultimate poet of compassion. This very word come alive, breathing and speaking love. This is the word that James calls us to welcome into our hearts with meekness, so that we too might become poets. We do not need to get clean enough to come to God. Being in the presence of love alone will transform us. So do not let this word wash over you and disappear. Do not let this word pass you by and leave you unchanged. Grab the word with your imperfect and sometimes dirty hands and eat it whole. Let the word change you, and let the word transform you, and let the word inhabit you, so that what comes out of your mouth is that same word, but in your own voice. This same song in your own translation. Let what comes out of your mouth be grace and compassion. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. And so may we become poets of that word, so that what comes out of us will be gentleness and generosity and honesty and kindness and humility and wisdom. That what comes out of us will be love, but also, please wash your hands. Amen.